Hey, hello, happy Wednesday. This feels very much like doing your assignment in the moments before it is due, because that's exactly what it is. I did not really feel like filming today, but I am here. I am doing it. I've been thinking about quite a lot of different things, and having some really, really interesting, nourishing conversations with people who like light you up rather than drain you, where you feel like you can do anything after you hang out with them. And I am so, so grateful for that. It stops that kind of tunnel vision blindness, which in some ways is necessary for building something, but it comes from over isolation and it really holds you back. You need to create within some kind of context of a network, somebody to bounce ideas off. Even if you're running a business, it just helps so much to actually have people to talk to. That's what makes London really different, and in some ways is that people are a lot more open about what they're dealing with, and they're a lot more approachable and ready to have cool conversations. Honestly, in a way, it's one of those bonding things of like nobody's really from here, so everybody is looking for connections, essentially, which is, it's really nice. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the future of social media. A really interesting thing is happening in the past few days where a lot of people seem to be getting the call to be visible and to go live and have real conversations and talk about their art and their business, and it's so refreshing. It's really interesting to see that people aren't just taking the AI, slop takeover lying down, that people are actually coming to a commonality and realizing that their voice really is important, and that now is the time to share it, in any way that you can. But the longevity of social media, now this is an interesting development, but pretty much everybody is thinking along the lines that it's going to change rapidly or it's going to become absolutely irrelevant and fairly useless in the next few years. Few things could change that if it's human-centric and remains quite free, if it's a little bit more decentralized, and if it is creative, and also if it's location based. It's incredibly useful in those ways. But in terms of the numbing and the scrolling, we're all getting the message, we're done with that. We need to shift into a different level of creative maturity, and not just be consumers, but be creatives. And it's interesting to see where society has shifted from a creative focus to more of a consumerist focus, and you see it in particular with art galleries and their gift shops, which are places I used to love in that they were centered on creating art. They were places to get wonderful art supplies and really interesting fringe art books, but now they've become specifically for consumers, people who will never create any art. This is an exaggeration, but it's like the Lee Miller Dachau tea towel. Like, nobody needs this. Why are we making this? Like, why aren't we selling, if you have to sell something at an exhibition, sell a reproduction camera, show us, give us a book on creating your own film prints, or a code on how to photograph really sensitive topics within your own time, or I guess. But as I was talking about this with friends and people who I love, they were kind of pointing out that I always look at things from the artist's perspective, in that I'm so obsessed with creating. But I guess on the other side of it, there are people who simply perceive art, and they love art, and they support artists, and they want to support their work, and they want to have a part of it, and that's a really important part of the economy as well. So as you might have guessed, I went to see the Lee Miller exhibit, the other day. It's a fantastic exhibition. Whoever put that out and laid it out in the flow of room to room and over the course of her life, it really, really did their job. It's a perfect example of really good curation, and yeah, it was, people were really affected by it. Like people were really emotional, and the images are, they're really good, and some of them are really pointed. And as she progressed throughout her career and she photographed more and more extreme things, the photographs are exceptional. She was an exceptional artist, you know. But I didn't find myself as moved as the other people, and it led me to maybe reflect on, am I numb? Am I numb to it? Have I just seen more? Like these people who, you know, are truly art lovers and were really emotional at the, you know, at the photographs. And they're a lot older than I am, and I've seen, you know, the vast majority of these images before. But I also look at it in a different perspective of like, as a photographer, as an artist, as an observer, yeah, it's a very different perspective. And also, you know, my training as, you know, throughout medical school and being a medical doctor, you know, I guess I have a different perception of things, you know, like the human body and surgery and various stages of the human body are not as shocking to me. And yeah, like maybe these people didn't, you know, go through anatomy class and, you know, didn't go to morgues and, you know, all these things that I've somehow encountered in my training. And, you know, I used to watch eye surgery for fun, you know, like it's a different sense, but also it really made me reflect on like what you perceive as normal throughout your life. Like I'm sure there are people walking down the street here who are, you know, probably war survivors who have come from really terrible places, and I couldn't imagine or perceive or probably handle what they've observed, and they're just out there walking around. It's this thing about unique perspective. You can test it, and there's a really good way to test it if you bring 2 or 3 photographers to the same shoot, and you will literally swear, looking at their different work, that these were 3 completely different experiences. And that's how different perspective is. And it's one of the joys of being a photographer, is that I actually get to show people what I see. A lot of people spend a lot of time, and it fuels a lot of art, in not being able to communicate what you actually see and what your perspective is and explain what you're seeing. But if you craft it, your perspective, and lean into being able to show that to people, it's incredibly valuable. And it's also historically valuable, where a tiny little print of exactly the right moment can bring people to tears like 90 years later, you know? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. It's kind of inspirational. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm also thinking about pictograms and hiking, and the little pictograms are like little symbols that mean, you know, that have like a little simplistic meaning. They're really common in like signs, or you see them in like graphic design, and particularly apps and stuff like that. But you know, like the symbol for hiking on hiking trails, that differs country by country. But I'm also thinking about, what if that little guy on the hiking sign, what if he laid down and took a nap, you know? Here, I'll show you. Okay, so there he is. He's walking. And what if we imagined him taking a nap under the tree, you know? It's funny, the stories we can tell with very, very simple, just a few lines. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a feature film. It can just be a series of little lines, and that's all you need for the human brain to derive and understand, and maybe invent a story around it, you know? That's the joy of human creativity. So that's what I've been working on. Lots of other things, huge creativity flowing out for some reason at this time. I don't think I'm alone in it. We're moving into some different kind of stage, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I think art for a lot of people is proving to be really cathartic, at this time, and it's a good release of emotions, but also, um, yeah, it's really interesting that if you're not always looking at it from the artist's perspective, but from an art lover's perspective of how much they would love to see your art and how impactful it could be. It's really inspirational, and it's not something you can think about necessarily while you're creating art because you're in the flow, but it did make me think differently about maybe images or simple moments that I would dismiss in normally in my art practice because it's not particularly remarkable, but maybe slowing down and looking at it of the perspective of if I honored this with it being on a museum wall and this was part of an overall story, with this slightly blurry photograph of, you know, a hand, would that have an impact? Maybe it would, So, yeah, lots of different thoughts. Go to a museum. Go support an artist. If you're an artist, go talk to somebody who loves art. Go have conversations. Get offline. Ironically enough. All right, bye.